There are a lot of folks who have experienced various traumas throughout their life, whether in their adult life or even before then. And for some folks, going into little space, especially if you're somebody who has had your power taken away from you, it can be a therapeutic sort of form of taking that power back and reclaiming it for yourself. So, for instance, if you're somebody who dealt with some really uncomfy, horrible things when you were little, being able to reclaim your childhood and relive it, but without all the ick. So getting a chance to sort of reclaim your childhood self and say, you know what, maybe I'm a 48-year-old woman, but I can be a 7-year-old right now. And let's say you want to put on Rugrats or go back to the 90s and reclaim the things that you missed or were taken from you when you didn't have the chance to fight for yourself. Now you do. And now you have the chance to maybe try to play that back out, but better.
Welcome to the Relationship Diversity Podcast, where we celebrate, question, and explore all aspects of relationship structure diversity, from soloamory to monogamy to polyamory and everything in between, because every relationship is as unique as you are. We'll bust through societal programming to break open and dissect everything we thought we knew about relationships, to ask the challenging but transformational questions: who am I, and what do I really want in my relationships? I'm your guide, Carrie Jaroslaw, best-selling author, speaker, intuitive, and coach. Join me as we reimagine all that our most intimate relationships can become. Today's episode is part of our conversation series. I'm just one voice in this relationship diversity movement, and it's important to bring more unique perspectives into the conversation. Today, I'm talking with Hilly Leather Little, an educator and leader in the age play community. I love this conversation because Hilly explains age play and debunks many myths and misperceptions about it. Stay curious as she talks about her roots in age play and why it feels so resonant for her and others. But first, a little about Hilly. Hilly Leather Little is a cisgender Leather Little from New Orleans. Her journey into BDSM began in 2005. She identifies as polyamorous, pansexual, and demisexual. Hilly is a neurodivergent DV survivor and struggles with illnesses that cause her chronic pain. Despite these challenges, she remains passionate about age play and BDSM. She's been long distance for 2.5 years with her Sir Daddy of 5 years. Hilly co-runs Little Scouts Troop 504, owns an age play Facebook group, and has a YouTube channel. She published an erotic novella featuring age play. She's spoken on several podcasts about age play, attended many Kink, BDSM, and age play conventions, and co-taught a virtual class on age play. Hilly's local community held a ceremony for her, presenting her with her first piece of earned leather boots for constant, dedicated, selfless service to the community. Hilly's mission is advocating for safe spaces and promoting education in BDSM and age play. She fosters understanding and acceptance to combat the hate, misinformation, and shame surrounding age play. She promotes inclusivity and encourages compassion towards age players, empowering individuals to explore without fear or shame. She aspires to fight for change and growth, continuing to serve the community and be a positive role model. Let's get into the conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Relationship Diversity Podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today because she's going to talk about a topic I've never talked about on this podcast, and a very valid relationship structure that I think often has a lot of misconceptions and judgments. And so she's here to debunk a lot of those for us. Today, I have Hilly here, and she is going to tell us all about her relationship structure and how she got into it. So, Hilly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'd love for you to start by introducing yourself to everyone and telling us a little bit about your relationship structure journey.
Okay, well, as stated, my name is Hilly, a 38-year-old cisgender polyamorous pansexual woman who lives in New Orleans, Louisiana. I am currently in a long distance polyamorous relationship with my primary partner, who I have been with for 5.5 years. Actually, it's closer to six. It'll be six in August at this point. We have been long distance since October of 2021. So a fair amount of time at this point. I am also an active member of the BDSM community. For those who don't know, I hate to say things like that's the like 50 Shades of Grey, but Kink BDSM, that sort of lifestyle. The more specific relationship structure and style that I'm in with my primary partner is we're in an age play dynamic. Some folks might understand the like daddy little girl type sort of dynamic. So this partner of mine, his name is Art. He is both a daddy to my little side. He's also the dominant of my more adult side. And we've been engaged in that dynamic just about almost exactly 5 years to the day at this point. He and I first got together in August of 2019, but it was around the pandemic when we started to explore more with kink and our dynamic. And he was actually very, very new to all of the lifestyle type things when he and I met. By no means was he not familiar with kink and with BDSM, but he hadn't had a whole lot of real world experience. So my famous what did you do during the pandemic story is I spent the pandemic teaching my boyfriend all about kink and BDSM. And we did a lot of exploring and experimenting and playing around with scening and engaging in that sort of physical play dynamic. And he's a very talented top in his own right today. As far as the age play dynamic in particular, it is a very often misunderstood kink. And that is to say that even within the umbrella of BDSM and that lifestyle, there's still a lot of misconception and misunderstanding about this kink and how it plays out in real time.
I'm curious, how did you first hear about it? And what about it interested you to start to explore? And then, even after that, what about it was like, oh, this is something that really resonates with me?
Honestly, it's tough to pin down when I heard about it necessarily because I've always had a sort of young kind of persona. The reason it's hard to pin down is because growing up, I was an actual child. But when I got involved in the BDSM community pretty young, like pretty much 21 years old, technically, I really started getting involved closer to 18, but got active in the community more so around 2021. And I was still the youngin in that group and just always had a sort of young personality or youthful personality. And I think it was just as I started to get older and realized that even as I was getting into my mid 20s and later years, that sort of youthful persona never really went away. And again, honestly, I couldn't tell you when I officially considered myself an age player or had that sort of verbiage to use. I don't know. I'm trying to think if, yeah, it's tough. I think in the beginning it was known more as DDLG until,
What does that stand for?
gender
DDL.
daddy dom little girl,
Okay.
DDLG. But as gender norms started to evolve and we started recognizing more genders, it became more gender neutral and using the more wide sweeping term of age play. And what really, I think, made it work for me, or what made me realize this was it, was for one thing, when I had a term for it, when I had words to put to this self, this persona, because one of the very distinct things about age play that you don't see in other types of kink is a sort of mental, emotional regression. Now, I use that term softly because there is a difference between age regressors and age players. One actually will go into a much younger state of mind to the point where they may even mentally regress as that is to say that they can't make adult decisions while they're in that headspace, whereas others, it's more of a role play. For me, it's a bit of both. But what really made it work for me, I think, was just it suddenly made sense when it wasn't just me being me, which was still me, but that I had a focus for it and engaging with the big type, the daddy type, or what have you. It just all suddenly made sense when I had the words to put to it, and when I started to really engage with others and exploring it more. Just yeah, just something just clicked, and I was just like, aha, that's it. This is me. This is why I've been the way I have been for most of my life, and why at 30 plus and into my 30s years old, I'm still a little one mentally. And I'm still a completely grown 38-year-old woman who can handle life and responsibilities. But yeah, I think I love being able to sort of escape to that headspace where you don't have to worry about adult responsibilities and all of the pressures of your adult world of life and chores and work and bills, and all of that can be just set aside, and you could just escape into a softer headspace.
So that is the context of your relationship with your primary partner. And is it like that the entire time? Is it a certain play time? What is the full dynamic of your relationship?
So it's definitely not all of the time. While there aren't necessarily set times where we would like go into play mode, it's more a seamless sort of back and forth, because I slip in and out of my quote unquote little headspace very easily, very seamlessly, can switch back and forth almost like a snap of a finger, can go into quote unquote little space, as they call it. So we recognize my little side with a whole different name. She actually goes by the name Allie, and my name is Hilly. And then there's Art, and there's Daddy. And I think it's just because we've been together long enough, he can recognize, even through text, which headspace I'm in. Now, when we are together, because we are long distance, when we are together, we do set aside times where we can essentially have daddy little time. And that usually consists of putting on a cute show. Like he likes having us put on Bluey. That's a favorite.
It's a good one.
And yeah, I mean, that one's just, you can't go wrong with Bluey. So we'll put on that, and I'll pull out toys or something. One of my little side's favorite things to do is to play with bubbles. So blowing bubbles. A lot of littles enjoy coloring. I'm not as big a fan, mainly because I also live with a lot of chronic pain issues, which include nerve pain and stuff in my hands. So my hands can cramp up sometimes, and that doesn't really translate well into playing in little space. Other activities that I like doing, playing with puzzles or stuffed animals, and just various things that you would expect like a little kid to play with. We'll cuddle, or when my hands are having a good day, sometimes Allie will color a picture for Daddy. There have been times I've even colored a picture for him, and he still has it on his refrigerator, pinned on the
Mm.
refrigerator in his house in Arizona. So, I mean, there's always that sort of sense that while we are both grown-ups dealing with grown-up things, there is that sort of dynamic that's always present. So he can slip into daddy mode at any time if he needs to remind me to do something, or to fuss at me or get onto me about something. So it's always present, even if it's not always necessarily right in the forefront.
And so it seems like because you guys have been together for such a long time, you know each other and you can do that kind of seamless in and out. But I'm wondering, for people who are newer to this kind of age play, how, in your experience by talking to people that are practicing age play, how they communicate in and out. Is there like, okay, we're going into this age play right now, and having a little bit more structure?
Well, my best advice, especially for folks who are getting into it for the first time or exploring it or are newer in general, is just like you prioritize negotiating before you engage in any type of kink scene or any BDSM type play. It's common and honestly should be standard that you negotiate. The same applies for age play, almost arguably more so, where you really dedicate time to sitting down and discussing what is it you want out of this experience? What is it that you're looking to gain from the experience? What are the things that you want to do while we're in this space, negotiating whether or not any sort of sexual play is okay or not okay. from one little to the next, that could vary very greatly. For myself, I engage in what it's referred to as dark age play because it's a more sensitive side of things and not as many people are comfortable with it. But dark age play is essentially when you engage in sexual play while you're in that space. But these are the things that you definitely need to negotiate ahead of time. And negotiating, what are we going to do while we're in this space? How long do we think we want to try it out? Do we have a set time or do we want to just play it by ear? Obviously, just like any other kink, going over limits and hard limits, soft limits, things that you're comfy with, and coming up with a couple of different, maybe key phrases similar to safe words that you can say to communicate. Let's say, for example, let's say you need to come up with a phrase to let the top know, or the dominant or the daddy type know that you're feeling uncomfy. Let's say you're not sure whether or not you want to engage in age play in a sexual way or not. So you start to explore. You want to make sure before you even step into that, that you guys have like some kind of a code or a safe word of some kind in place in case, let's say you start engaging in it and the daddy or mommy or the big is the term we use for the top side or the grown up. Let's say they are patting your knee or your leg and they start stroking your thigh and you get really uncomfortable all of a sudden and you realize at that moment, oh, I think maybe I might be someone who's not comfy with sexual play while I'm in this space. Being able to have a word that you can use that doesn't necessarily ruin the headspace, but can still let the big know, okay, I've realized or discovered I'm not comfy there. Just coming up with a phrase or a safe word like cucumber, something like that. Just says what's a very quick word that you can say that indicates I'm not comfy with this. And just being able to get through all of those negotiations ahead of time is definitely important. And having safe words in place for things that you're not sure about, because there's plenty of things you might discover that you won't discover until you start trying them out. That would be my best advice, is just to make sure to negotiate thoroughly.
That is definitely in a lot of the sex positive, whether it's BDSM, kink, swinging, whatever it is, that is a big part, is negotiation and being clear about what everyone wants. That is really important.
And also being clear on the fact that there are some things you may not even cover during negotiation because you won't even discover it until you start engaging in it. That's why the importance of having a, in case we start trying this and I feel uncomfy, safe word.
Definitely. Because I think a lot of it we can think in our heads, oh, I think we'll be okay with that. But until we actually get our bodies into it, we don't know. And it could trigger
Right.
something. Yeah. Are all of your relationships, do they all have a component of age play?
No. So Art is the only person that I'm very seriously involved with. He's my primary partner. I do have some much more casual partners. The other person I would consider my more regular partner, the person I see often and have the deepest connection with outside of Art, is a gentleman who I'm not going to use his name because I haven't asked if
Yeah.
he's comfy with it. But let's just, for the sake of, we're going to put a name there. I'm just going to say, I don't know, Adam, just to come
Perfect.
up with something. Adam goes to a lot of the conventions that I go to. He's a vendor, so he actually makes BDSM toys. So he's often at a lot of the events that I attend across the country. I attend kink conventions, BDSM, leather conventions, as well as, ironically, or I guess not so ironically, but there's spanking conventions, which this is a more recent discovery. I discovered spanking conventions back in like late 2023, which is a total game changer for me because I'd been going to kink conventions since 2011. I've been in the lifestyle and active since 2005. Spanking was always my first and greatest love, and yet I didn't discover spanking conventions until 2023. He and I started to develop a connection right around this time last year, around April, at a spanking convention, ironically. But he's someone who I've described as he's my safe place. Art and I have only been to one convention together, although that's going to change by the time that you air this. We'll have attended Southeast Leatherfest by then, but he attended the convention where I competed for my title back in December. But that's the only time we've ever been at a convention together, whereas Adam and I have now been to many conventions together. But he and I don't have quite as much of an age play dynamic. He brings out more of my soft submissive side, whereas art brings out much more of my little side. So no, not all of the partners that I'm involved in do I have that dynamic with. One of my more casual partners, that is an aspect that's come out. Actually, two of my casual partners. These are individuals who I've been to one or two events with. One of them is currently in the army. Another I recently met in Las Vegas, and he and I had a couple of amazingly hot scenes during that weekend. That was in February. And those were in instances where the age play factor came into play pretty
Mhm.
strongly. But yeah, definitely not with all of my partners. It just seems
It's
some bring out certain sides of
That's
me,
what I
I
was
guess,
gonna
and
say.
others.
It sounds
Yeah.
like it's probably the dynamic between certain
Yeah.
people. And I talk about that a lot in this podcast is every relationship is unique because of the people in it and the people that bring out certain qualities and aspects of you and you of
Yeah. And
them.
they
And
really they all kind of develop organically. And while funnily enough, my first scene with Adam, it was funny because we discovered in the middle of the scene that he had never played with a little before, with an age player before. And it was when we were doing a spanking scene and I'm over his lap and he flips up my skirt and realizes that what I'm wearing underneath is a onesie. And he just cocks his head to the side and he goes, "Huh, I don't think I've ever spanked anyone in a onesie before." And I looked over my shoulder at him and I went, "So I take it you've never spanked a little before?" And he goes, "No, can't say that I have." And we ended up role playing during that scene, which was another cherry of his popped. It kind of became a running joke that our thing is popping cherries of his um
I
as often as
love
possible
the
because
symbolism. Yeah.
I also popped his role play cherry. He'd never role played before, which was funny because role play is pretty common in the Spanko community, but he comes from more of the BDSM community more so than Spanko community, even though he is at a lot of the Spanko events. BDSM is where he lives mostly.
I wanted you to explain for people because there's probably people out there that don't even know what a scene is. Like, what is
Mhm.
that? Can you explain that for people who are not in the community and don't know at all what that means?
Yeah, so a scene is when two or more individuals engage in some sort of act, like a BDSM or a kink act, such as a spanking, or let's say that your kink is rope or bondage play, and you engage in an act that could or could not be sexual. It really depends. Again, it's very different depending on one person or the next. But so if you're into rope, then a rope scene might look like the top or the person who's doing the tying up is wrapping you in rope while you're just standing in front of them or sitting in front of them. Or a scene, if you're more into restraints or bondage, could look like being restrained by the wrists, having your wrists tied up. Essentially, a scene is when you're engaging in one or more of these types of BDSM activities that oftentimes will involve sexual components, but that don't necessarily have to.
And these are things that happen at parties and events.
They can happen at events or parties. They can happen at your house. Where they happen doesn't determine whether or not it's a scene.
Got it.
Most of the scenes that Art and I have happened in my house.
Mm.
Ironically, that we ended up choosing during the pandemic. He lived by himself in his own house, and his other partner lived in her own house, and I lived in a place with a roommate. But most of our dates ended up happening at my house. So most of our scenes have happened at my house and particularly in my room. But the location doesn't matter
Right. So it's
so
the
much as the
idea is
activity
so right. So the idea is it's an agreed upon
and
experience
pre-negotiated experience. Yeah,
that two people or three or four or however many decide that they want to have an experience with. And it is talked about most of the time. And I think in the best case scenario beforehand about what you're going to do. And then you play it out.
right.
Thank you for explaining that.
Mhm.
Now, I want to go back to age play for a minute because you talked about the different dynamics specifically like I think most people know it as like a daddy little girl dynamic and
Mhm.
with gender diversity that has really exploded into lots of different kinds of age play dynamics. Can you talk a little bit about the different kinds?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you brought this up because while the most typically recognized is the sort of daddy little girl dynamic, there's a whole spectrum. Just like gender is on a spectrum, so is age play. For example, I mostly identify more as a little, but on the spectrum there are littles, middles, and bigs. That's the sort of inside the umbrella of age play. So littles are much play at a much younger age. To preface also, within the greater umbrella of age play, there's also those who refer to themselves as ABDLs, which is short for adult babies or diaper lovers. So those who might fall into the younger little side may wear diapers and typically enjoy role playing and engaging in that much younger. Then you've got older littles and then into sort of middles kind of fall into anywhere between the late single digits into mid-teens. This subcategory are less likely to be running around with pacifiers in their mouths or regress into seriously young ages and might engage in more playful behavior, more potentially bratty behavior. Ironically, that's where I find most of the Spankos that I've met seem to fall into that category. If they do engage in age play, they tend to fall into the middle space because they really enjoy the sort of playful, bratty dynamics. And then there's bigs who age isn't quite as specific with bigs. Really, the only appreciable difference is that they identify as the adult type. What's interesting is Art is actually younger than me. He is actually the first and only gentleman I've ever dated who is younger than me. He was just on the cusp of being too young for me before our first date. And I guess he got lucky because I took a chance and our conversation ended up blossoming. Ironically, started talking about Game of Thrones. And that caught my attention on OkCupid. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll give this guy a shot. I think I'm about between 4 years older than him, I think. So I think I might have been 33 and he was 29 on our first date. And like he was just about to turn 30, I think, when I first started chatting with him. And I was like, okay, I'll give him a shot since he's almost 30s. So that counts. That's acceptable. But yeah, it runs the gamut when it comes to the subcategories of age play. And which category you fall into can depend on everything from where you feel most comfy at to what type of personality comes out depending on the type of person that you're engaging with. Honestly, for the most part, I fall into a more middle type space with Art because my bratty side comes out a lot. Our dynamic is very playful. One of the things that I really enjoyed experiencing and exploring with him that I hadn't really explored a lot before him was the more playful side of BDSM and being silly even in the middle of a scene that's supposed to be more serious or he's supposed to be the big bad dom and then a joke gets cracked in the middle of a scene. We've got some really funny memories of various things that have happened during the course of the pandemic when we were scening. Memories of him having me with my nose up against a wall with a penny up against the wall and then standing back up straight when he told me I could stand up and looking at the penny, which stayed on the wall and didn't fall off. And that one's a really fun one to reminisce about. But I think I fell into a more playful headspace with him. There's actually a funny video on my YouTube that starts with me arguing with him about how old I am. Now, in this video, I think the video's a birthday surprise or something. It was something birthday related, but the video begins with me firmly in little space. So I'm in that regressed mindset. And I'm just being really snarky with him and arguing about how dare he think I'm older than 3 years old. And like just the playful back and forth banter is there. And you really get a chance to see that dynamic to its fullest in that video. I love it so much because you can't see him, but you can hear him because he's holding the camera. And you just get a chance to hear that back and forth.
Well, we'll link your YouTube channel so people can check that out. And I'm curious, I know in the BDSM community there are switches. So switches are people that go back and forth from dom to sub. Is there that kind of thing in age play?
There can be for sure. For one thing, I know that there is such a thing. Now, while I can't personally speak to this from a personal experience level, I know that there is such a thing as dominant littles. I've met at least a few, so I know they exist. I know it's not a myth because if I hadn't met them, I'd probably wonder if maybe that was a myth. But no, they are out there. That's actually a whole subcategory is dominant littles and littles who switch. It's not something I can identify or speak to on my level because I don't switch and art is not a switch. And most of the people that I engage with don't engage in switch behavior. Now, not that's not to say all of them. I recently met a newer friend who is definitely like a very strong switch category. He's firmly in the top side as he is in his bottom side and has been exploring his bottom side more at least recently. And it's been fun watching him explore that new territory. He's also someone who's exploring his little space too. So
Mm.
I'm always really excited when I see somebody exploring new sides of them, and especially someone who found little space for the first time or gets to engage it for the first time and discovers that love of regression and sort of playful headspaces, I guess.
Yeah. So that leads me to the question of are there, because we talked about the daddy little girl dynamic, is there the mommy little boy dynamic?
Oh yeah, it runs the gamut. Actually, before my relationship with art started to progress, the relationship that I was in before that was with a woman who she was my caregiver, which is the other term for the big side, otherwise known as the caregiver. She was actually my big or my top. She was my mama for my little side. So you see that on all sides of the spectrum. One of my good friends, Mako, he used to co-host the Big Little podcast back in the day with his brother at the time. And he's a little who has a mommy. So yeah, they run the gamut of gender expression for sure.
I'd love to hear more about the common misconceptions about age play and have you speak to some of those.
So one of the most common misconceptions that I seem to come across is when people have difficulty separating the fact that it's playing with such quote unquote dangerous age dynamics and mixing that with sexuality and sexual play. And the reason I say this is frustrating is because, in my experience, it's no different than two grown adults, two people over the age of consent negotiating a scene of any kind. What gets misconstrued, I think, is because when you bring in that age aspect and that sort of role play aspect, people start to get uncomfortable when they're seeing someone who is playing the role of someone under the age of consent and playing with those sexual dynamics. And I've heard everything from that this kink is sexualizing children, which it absolutely is not. Anyone who were to observe me could definitely tell you I'm definitely older than 18 years old, but you can see that I go into a younger headspace, but I'm still a 38-year-old woman who knows how to negotiate and knows how to say yes or no. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that I see come across is not being able to separate the fact that a lot of times it can be sexual with the fact that we're playing with a younger headspace or someone who's playing the role of a younger person. I've heard that it's promoting pedophilia or that it encourages pedophiles. And none of these things are true. These are all 0% accurate because what we do at the end of the day is negotiated scenes with other consenting adults. These are consenting adults negotiating scenes with other consenting adults. That's the main misconception that I've tried to help to dispel and to try to offer more information on to help dispel that stigma. And I think the reason it blows my mind is just because even the people who seem to have no problem understanding other types of kinks can't seem to wrap their mind around age play. And I understand it from the perspective of, especially when you're deep in the BDSM lifestyle, everything hinges on consent between adults. So being able to still understand that concept and that precept of BDSM, but then wrapping your mind around the idea of someone playing the role of a young person who's not old enough to consent. I guess it some people struggle with being able to really comprehend or separate the two. And that's why I say that one of the first things that's the most important anytime you're engaging in this, like any other type of kink, is thorough negotiation, thorough, and an ongoing, consistent, evolving negotiation process that can continue even while you're in the middle of engaging in this. That's why you have mid-scene type safe words to use and putting all of the safety nets in place to make sure that you're doing things as responsibly as possible.
Yeah, and I also think education is probably really important. Do you have
Yes.
resources that have been helpful for you or for others that age play?
So there have been a couple of YouTubers. Now, they're not as active lately, but I have some of them listed on my YouTube channel. I've got at least five of them listed.
So
Um,
there's five resources on your YouTube channel
yeah, at the
that people
bottom
can.
of my YouTube channel that
Mhm.
says Great Fellow Creators. The first
Mm.
one and the one that I have enjoyed the most that I think has a lot of really great, helpful and educational sort of content is the first one listed is milk webs. That's milk like the drink milk, and then webs like spider webs, but all one word. I loved her videos. Actually, her videos are what inspired me to make my own YouTube channel. Now,
Mm.
granted, keep in mind I only have a handful of videos up there because Art was my editor and it became much more difficult for him to edit my videos when he moved away. Because when he moved away to Arizona, he actually ended up moving with his other partner and moving in with her. So he had a lot less available time to edit videos for me. And video editing is just not in my
It does
repertoire.
take a lot of time.
Um, I've tried a few different like apps and software, and it's just not in my wheelhouse.
But I'm
Um,
sure any videos that you have is more than nothing. And so there are resources on your YouTube channel, which is really important. And then these other YouTube channels that you have linked on your page.
Yes, and there's websites as well. There's actually a website called ageplay101.com. That's ageplay
Mm,
one word, and then the numbers
mm.
101.com. It's got a plethora of great blogs and other resources. There's lessons and then contact info. There's also AB Universe. That's the letters AB and then universe.com. They've got some
AB.
great resources.
So you said
Yeah.
abuniverse.com.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
A as in the letter A, the letter B, and then universe.com. Those are two great initial resources to check out. And my experience, honestly, outside of that has been classes at events and conventions, at conventions across the country or even in your local community. That's been my go-to, at least for starters, has been classes at conventions that, and they've been really diverse lately. I've seen more people presenting more classes on age play than I've had in the past.
Thank you for all the resources. We're going to link a lot of that down in the show notes. I've talked to other people in the BDSM community who've talked about BDSM as a way to help them heal parts of themselves. I'm
Mhm.
wondering if you have that experience with age play. Is there a healing quality that you found with age play?
Absolutely. For one thing, I think in many ways, being able to just escape the stresses of everyday life and the pressures of your everyday responsibilities of work and chores and bills and all of the things that you have to deal with every day that lay on your shoulders and cause lots of stress, being able to set that aside and have opportunities to say, you know what, I'll come back to this at a later time, but right now I'm going to go into little space and I'm going to grab my coloring book and I'm going to put Bluey on and I'm going to grab my stuffed animal and I'm just going to lay in bed and color while I watch Bluey for a little while. And you know what? I can deal with all of those problems that exist in my world, in my life. They'll be waiting for me later. But right now, I'm going to grab my remote control and play video games or whatever the activity is that you enjoy, being able to just escape from all the stuff you have to deal with every day because everybody needs a break once in a while.
Definitely. It sounds like
And
self care to me. That sounds like,
honestly, yeah, it is a very valid form of self-care for a lot of people. And other things that I think about when I think about the therapeutic benefits. Now, this is a little bit of a trigger warning, but I know that there are a lot of folks who have who have experienced various traumas throughout their life, whether in their adult life or even before then. And for some folks, going into little space, especially if you're somebody who has had your power taken away from you, it can be a therapeutic sort of form of taking that power back and reclaiming it for yourself. So, for instance, if you're somebody who dealt with some really uncomfy, horrible things when you were little, being able to reclaim your childhood and relive it, but without all the ick. So, getting a chance to sort of reclaim your childhood self and say, you know what, maybe I'm a 48-year-old woman, but I can be a 7-year-old right now. And let's say you want to put on Rugrats or go back to the 90s and reclaim the things that you missed or were taken from you when you didn't have the chance to fight for yourself. Now you do. And now you have the chance to maybe try to play that back out, but better.
And I can only imagine that in that scenario, to be able to negotiate beforehand, this is the experience that I'm wanting and needing, is also reclaiming power and
Yeah,
very
exactly.
empowering for people.
I'm actually glad that you brought back the conversation of negotiation because not all age play has to have a big involved or a caregiver involved. My very first YouTube video is all about how to find your own little space
Hmm.
without a big. And that can be a really therapeutic experience where you don't need anyone else around in order to enjoy it and appreciate it for all of its benefits. But that also might mean that like you need some negotiations will look a little different or sound a little different if you're negotiating with yourself, but it is still important to maybe sit down and think about what is it I want to get out of this experience. Even if it's just like grabbing a notebook and doing some bullet points and like writing down a few things about what do I want to experience during this time? What are some of the activities that I want to try out? And even like going back to a notebook, let's say after you've explored some time in little space, go back to the notebook afterwards and do some more journaling and say, okay, here are the list of things that I tried. And here's the ones I liked. Here's the ones I didn't like. This is their own form of pre and post negotiation and aftercare with
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see how that could be healing.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, thank you for taking us through that. And so I think that that further debunks these misperceptions about
Yeah.
age play, that there is a lot more to it than people think or than
Yeah. I
you
mean,
think on the surface.
it's far more nuanced than just DDLG, which is what people are familiar with when they hear the term. I'm pretty sure most people who are unfamiliar with age play don't think about a person sitting in the room by themselves just playing video games with a stuffed animal tucked under their arm.
Hmm.
It doesn't always have to look the way that you think it might look. And if your form of engaging in age play looks different than what you think it should, stop yourself right there because it should look however feels comfiest for you. That's whatever feels the comfiest for you to do and engage in, that's the right way to do it. As long as there's no one getting harmed in the situation, there's no cases of consent being violated, and everybody's on board, whether that everybody is just you or you and other people. As long as everyone is having fun and having a good time and nobody is being harmed in any way, then however you do it is the right way to do it.
I love that. And that is a lot of what I talk about on this podcast is that we're all unique. So
Mm-hmm.
let's do our best to break these boxes open of like how things are supposed to be. As
Yeah.
long
I
as no
mean,
one is being hurt and there is consent, you will do it in your own way.
and it might look different depending on what partner you know. If you're somebody who's polyamorous or into ethical non-monogamy, it might look different depending on who you're engaging in it with. Like in my examples, each of my dynamics looks a little bit different. And there might be stronger age play dynamics with art or with some of the other partners that I have. And then there's stronger DS dynamics with Adam, for example. All of these things, they've developed organically into their own thing. It doesn't have to look any sort of way. It's just whatever feels right for you and those involved.
Right, right. I love that. Before we leave, I know before you mentioned a title that you have won a title in
Yes.
age play. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the term, a title is something that a person runs for in a competition. And this most often happens in BDSM and leather spaces. And essentially, a title holder is someone who is a leader and an educator in their community. And yes, back in December, I competed for a title and I won that competition. And I have since spent the time since then traveling to conventions and events all over the country and continuing to advocate and educate and to be a resource for people who are curious or have questions or want to learn more. The primary job that I've had as a title holder is simply just to be out and to show by example what little space looks like for me, and to demonstrate and show what age play looks like in real time. I've done a lot of advocacy. For instance, I'm actually in the process of developing a class on ethical bratting, of all things, because in the Spanko community particularly, there's a lot of brats in the Spanko community, and brats tend to fall into the same category as age play a lot of times. And not everybody understands the appropriate ways to behave, because brat dynamics tend to fall similarly like as age play do, where people don't think about the importance of negotiating before engaging in these types of kinks. But at the end of the day, they do fall under the kink umbrella. So I ran for the title in Florida and have since gone to 4 conventions, be 5 in June, just basically teaching, advocating, and answering any questions people have. And I've gotten a lot of questions everywhere I've gone. Even before I competed for the title, I actually went to 10 conventions last year and advocated at every single one of them. And just by showing them, by running around the convention all weekend, wearing onesies and dresses and having a stuffed animal firmly attached to my hip at all times and blowing bubbles in people's faces and just showing the sweet and silly and playful and wholesome dynamic that is age play, how nuanced and multifaceted it is.
Well, wow, you have definitely shared a lot of information with us today, and I have learned so much. So I appreciate your willingness to come here and share your wisdom. And I wish you so much luck in the future, because I just know that you are going to help age play find its community, expand its community, and help people who really resonate with it understand more about it and have the experience.
Yeah, that's the goal. The competition that I competed for, mark my words, it's not the last. Right now, I'm a quote unquote regional title holder, but my ultimate goal is to go international. So I'm hoping one day, I don't know if it's going to be a year from now or 10 years from now, but I hope to be competing for an international title on an international stage here at some point.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I hope so too for you. And everyone, if this resonates with you and you're interested, go check Hilly out on her YouTube channel. I'll have the link in the show notes. Hilly, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for listening to the Relationship Diversity Podcast. Want to learn more about relationship diversity? I've got a free guide I'd love to send you. Go to www.relationshipdiversitypodcast.com to get yours sent right to you. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast. You being here and participating in the conversation about relationship diversity is what helps us create a space of inclusivity and acceptance together. The more comfortable and normal it is to acknowledge the vast and varied relating we all do, the faster we'll shift to a paradigm of conscious, intentional, and diverse relationships. New episodes are released every Thursday. Stay connected with me through my website, carriejaroslow.com, Instagram, or TikTok. Stay curious. Every relationship is as unique as you are. Are you wondering why you never seem to find lasting fulfillment in your relationships? Or do you create the same kinds of relationship experiences over and over again? Can you never seem to find even one person who you want to explore a relationship with? Have you just given up hope altogether? If this sounds like you, my recent book, Why Do They Always Break Up With Me, is the perfect place to start. The foundation of any relationship, whether intimate or not, is the relationship we have with ourselves. In the book, I lead you through 8 clear steps to start or continue your self-exploration journey. You'll learn about the importance of self-acceptance, gratitude, belief shifting, and forgiveness, and given exercises to experience these life-changing concepts. This is the process I use to shift my relationships from continual heartbreak to what they are now, fulfilling, soul-nourishing, compassionate, and loving. It is possible for you. This book can set you on a path to get there. Currently available through Amazon or through the link in the show notes.